All right, joining me now is Brandon Duenas, who is covering the Phoenix Suns for AZ Sports Zone, Bright Side of the Sun, and is the host of Locked On Suns. Brandon, thank you so much for tuning in, man. I'm really excited to see your coverage for the Suns this year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. I know we were talking before we hopped on just with, just knowing each other over the years, just through Twitter. So it's cool to jump on here and have a little conversation, a little preview of the Suns and everything, and looking forward to it.
Hoping that we get to talk deep into the season. I suspect that both of these teams, I'm not going to be doing as much Nuggets coverage on this particular show, but they're still the team that I'm here locally to cover. So we'll have plenty of conversations about these two teams, and I think that that'll be plenty of fun. I am excited though to see what the Suns do after some major moves in this offseason. A lot of tabloid news, a lot of things changed about the team over the course of these last couple seasons. Tell me, what is the most interesting thing about the team in your mind right now?
I think just the team that they built around Booker, Durant, and Beal, just surrounding them with high IQ shooters that can space the floor. We just saw a little preview of what that could look like today in preseason. They dropped 46 points. Obviously, it's preseason against the Pistons, so you can't take that stuff too seriously. But at the same time, for them to look that in sync right away, just in surrounding, like I said, just the shooters with Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, Utah Watanabe. They have a very dangerous offense that I think has a chance to be one of the best in the NBA, if not the best, if they stay healthy. But at the same time, obviously, the defense is a question mark. There's going to be some depth concerns that could pop up if one of their stars goes down. So, all that fun stuff. But overall, I just think the way they built the team is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to how it kind of comes together.
It's been over the course of these last couple of years that's kind of coalesced into a very impressive big three. The trade for Bradley Beal this summer, as you mentioned, the trade for Jusuf Nurkic, as you mentioned. This is going to be a very fascinating season for this group. And there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on those guys in particular, because you know what you're going to get from Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Devin Booker, I have him ranked so high on a top 100 that I've been made fun of for ranking him that high. He is amazing, and what he did in the playoffs was amazing and deserves that credit. Bradley Beal and Jusuf Nurkic, though, the most recent stints that we've seen from those guys have been less than stellar. What can you tell us about what versions of Bradley Beal and Jusuf Nurkic the Suns are hoping to get?
Yeah, I'll start with Beal just because I think it's a little bit easier to transition from a team like the Wizards, where he's the number one option. The offense flows through him, and he's asked to do a lot on a team that wasn't playing a ton of important games, especially defensively. Like, they kind of had like a rec feel to their team, like where it was just kind of rec ball, where it was just whatever. There wasn't a ton of structure. So I think in a Frank Vogel defense where he's going to have less of a burden offensively, to where he could expend a little more energy on the defensive end. Like, I think his role being simplified will. I think a lot of people are kind of underestimating how that's going to look. Like, he's going to be getting a lot of open looks with the doubles that Booker and KD get all the attention. Just, Nuggets fans saw a little like Landry Shamet have a game out of nowhere where he hit like 6 threes. And I think you plug Beal in that role, and I think it's going to be a lot. He's going to have a lot more responsibilities than Shamet, hopefully. But at the same time, it's just it's going to be a seamless fit, and just the off-ball stuff I'm excited about. So with Beal, I think that's going to click a lot sooner than some people might think on the surface. But there will be some growing pains for sure. There's going to be, you have 3 stars that can drop 30 any game. Like, they're going to have some growing pains for sure. So, and then on the other side with Nurkic, I very publicly is not a huge fan of the fit, to be honest. But I do think, he's a big body that he can rebound, mix it up a little bit. And, he's a pretty good passer too. So I think offensively there's some creative things you could use him for. And but on the defensive side, I think there's definitely going to be some struggles, especially come playoff time, that they're going to have to deal with and address. But I think with Eubanks and Metu and even Bolt, like, they have some bodies they can throw out there. So it's we'll see how the Nurkic experience goes. But I think playing in meaningful games hopefully will help him as well.
Yeah, it's a big factor, honestly, is I think people didn't realize how dark and depressing the Blazers have become the past couple of years. And and
Yeah.
how that can affect a player like him. And it's a lot of pressure that they've put on him over the course of these last couple. Maybe less pressure this time around with Phoenix might be
Mhm.
a good thing for him, but we will see. You mentioned the top four, obviously. There are a bunch of new role players that this team has just added. They've had minimum contracts available to them during the offseason, and they tried to make the most of it, even making a trade to try to bolster some of that depth. Who are some of the role players that you're thinking about that you're assuming are going to step up in a playoff rotation that this team is going to learn to lean on?
Yeah, so I think the main two that stand out to me right off the bat are Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen, just being those versatile guards that can spread the floor. They can dribble a little bit, like they're not, a primary creator or point guard or anything, but you could play them alongside any of Beal or Booker, and I think that interchangeability, like at the guard position, is going to help them a lot, both in regular season and playoffs. So to me, their guard rotation of Booker, Beal, Allen, and Gordon, like that's pretty damn strong. So I'm excited to see how
Sure.
that rotation works out. And then, I think where they're a little bit lacking is just the wing department. I think Utah Watanabe is going to be an awesome floor spacer. We'll see how he looks defensively. I know he tries on that end, but he's definitely limited. Nasir Little was a nice sneaky pickup, could be a good energy guy. Josh Okogie last year had his moments where he looked like Gary Payton one day, and then the next day he'd disappear. So hopefully get a little more consistency out of him. So they definitely have some options with their depth, and the bigs I talked about a little bit too with Eubanks and Metu, guys that they've been in NBA rotations. They can carve out minutes if they need to, but overall, like a lot of it's going to come down to the stars staying healthy and just finding the right guys around them.
I currently have Okogie as the guy penciled in at the small forward spot for them. Is that right? Do you think that's the way it's going to shake out, or could it be Keita Bates-Diop? Could it be Watanabe? Are they going to go small? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think at this point, especially after today's game, they ended up starting him, and Vogel's been quoted a few times just saying like it could be matchup dependent. Like if they're playing a bigger team, we could see Bates Diop or someone even like Med2 or Bowl just to really just match size, just have a fifth starter that's just going to eat minutes early and then go smaller with some of those other guys later. But I think Okogie is probably the favorite just because they need point of attack defense pretty desperately. So his ability to fight over screens and kind of mess things up and take on the Stephs and Jamal Murray's and quick guards of the world that can shoot. I think that's where he's gonna probably have more of a role in games like that. So yeah, I think we could see a lot of different starting lineups unless Kobe just takes it and runs with it. So he's definitely the odds-on favorite though at this point.
I know a lot of people have mentioned no point guard, none of that. I'm not as worried about that, especially from an offensive standpoint. You put the ball in Bradley Beal's hands, Devin Booker's hands, Kevin Durant's hands, you're going to be fine. The most important thing, though, is like defensively to me. I still don't see a roster that's going to get enough stops. That's one question I have about this team kind of going into the season and into the playoffs. That's not going to affect them in the regular season because they're going to outgun teams, and I feel pretty strongly that they're going to be a massively awesome regular season opponent. But in the playoffs, when the matchups kind of boil down to it, do you think this team can get enough stops when it matters?
I think it's definitely a fair question. And it's definitely my biggest concern for this team because I think, like you said, offensively, like I don't think there's a team that can really match them, like in terms of just the straight up firepower they have from different options. Obviously Milwaukee, we'll see how that works out. I think Denver, obviously, of course, is they're the defending champs. So until someone takes it from them, like that, to me, they're still the favorites to win it all. So I think those are the two teams I look at. And then Boston, obviously, I think did adding Drew. There's some depth concerns with them, but yeah, defensively, I think they'll be good enough to where they can hold their own in moments, but there will definitely be some weaknesses that will be exposed, and I think that's why Frank Vogel hiring him was massive, just because if anyone can make it work, I think it's him with his system where they play pretty conservative. They try to pack it in. It's more of a team defense. It's not about individuals shutting people down. And I think Booker's ability to defend is pretty underrated at this point too. I think he's not a stopper by any means, but I think he's turned into a pretty good defender. And same with Durant. Like when he turns it on, he can really defend, especially on those on the weak side, contesting shots, which could help Nurkic, especially with some of the ground coverage that he lacks, to put it nicely, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think it's definitely their biggest weakness, and it's really they just have to be competent on that end. They don't have to be special. I think if they can get in that 10 to 15 range defensively and just be the number one offense, then they have a chance to win games even in the playoffs. But if they're giving up 130 points, then there's a real problem there.
That's one thing I learned covering Denver this last year, is that it may not have looked pretty during the regular season, but they found ways to turn up the heat during the playoffs. And they did that against pretty much every team. And that was a very, very important piece of this. So it's going to be about finding those role players. And so guys like Okogie and Keita Bates-Diop will be extremely helpful. Even Eric Gordon, I know he's up there in years, but he's a pretty good point of attack defender and a switch defender when he wants to be. All right. Well, hey, give me your season win total prediction. I'm curious to see where you think this team finishes in the regular season.
Yeah. So the over-under right now in most places is sitting somewhere in like the 51 to 53 range, something like that. And to me, like, I think they're good enough to flirt with 60, like just on talent, but we just don't know how serious they're going to take the regular season in the first place. So I'm going to throw 55 out there as my actual guess. Just because I think there's going to be some days where, they, even with the new rules that they rest a guy or two that are like quote unquote injured, there's going to be actual injuries that happen because they, Durant, Beal, and Booker all have a little bit of an injury history too. So I think they have the talent to win 60. Do I think they're going to go out there and do it? Probably not. So I'll just go with 55.
I have them at 53, but I do have them winning at the top seed in the West, just because it feels like everything is so compressed with how much talent there is in the West. 11 teams that Absolutely. I think you could definitely call plus 500 teams if you wanted to, and nobody would really bat an eye. So that, I think, is compressing the number. But you're right. I think this is the team that I think has the best chance to be the top seed in the West. Just based off of having three different offensive options that you can call pillars, and just piecing it together behind them is going to be very helpful. I do have this team losing in the conference finals to Denver, though. I think that this is a group that is going to be like a very strong playoff team. They'll match up with pretty much everybody else, but I still just don't see the matchup against Jokic and Murray slowing those guys down enough defensively. That's what you're talking about. Can you hold teams to under 130? I'm not sure that they're going to be able to against Denver, but we'll see. Where do you see them finishing?
Yeah, I think I'm with you that I think that's going to be the conference finals at this point. Obviously, seeding could change that, because like we saw last year, that ended up being the second round matchup, and I think they're a better team than they were last year. But obviously, they gotta make it click, and hopefully, from my point of view, just outscore Denver, because I think that's how they're going to end up beating them if they can, and that's a tough task to do against the best player in the world, and in Jokic. There's no answer for him, so I think that's part of the reason they made that trade. Is Ayton's not going to, like, he's done a decent job in the past of trying to slow him down, but you're not going to slow him down. So at this point, I think they're just trying to lean into their strengths, and that's right now just trying to be the best offensive team possible and play competitive defensively. So I think I really could see that being, if both teams are healthy, going 7 games. Like, I think it's gonna be a slugfest, but being the Suns guy, I'm going to go with the Suns here. I think it's going to be close, though. I think these are the best two teams in the NBA right now. I think Boston and Milwaukee are right there as well. Obviously, I want to see how that Milwaukee team looks before saying anything, but yeah, I think those are the clear top 4 to me right there.
If you saw this team getting to the NBA Finals, do you think they'd beat whoever they come across?
If they're healthy, I think they can. But obviously, I think like I said, if they end up getting past Denver and it's a Milwaukee rematch, I don't know if my heart could handle that again. Because the Giannis Lillard combo is definitely deadly. Yeah. But I think it just really comes down to who's hot at the right time and health. That's just the cop-out answer. But if those two things are clicking for them, I think they're definitely good enough to win a championship and get that first one. And I want to know the feeling that you guys just had. So that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Well, we will see what happens, Brandon. He is Brandon Duenas, who's covering for Bright Side of the Sun this year, Locked On Suns podcast at AZ Sports Zone on X. Dude, thank you so much for hopping on. I can't wait to read the rest of your coverage this year.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Have a good one.